Okay, in the second video, I'm going to show you how we can use different modules such as crop, straighten, and black and white to greatly improve this image. I've already opened the image, so you know how to do it from the last movie, but what I'm going to show you now is how to use the straighten module. So it's actually really simple. What you see here is, if you look carefully at the grid, you'll notice that the horizon isn't perfectly horizontal. Now, it's not a big deal in this picture. You can see that the difference is barely perceptible. But you know, I'm kind of pedantic when it comes to straight horizons, so I'll just see if I can make this horizon perfectly straight. Okay, so in order to rotate the image, so what you can do is just drag the image along the side and do it very slowly until you get a perfectly straight horizon. And you know, I think I'm almost there. And just one more second. I think I got it. Alright, perfect. You can see that I'm rotating the image by about minus 0.78 degrees, which really isn't much, but you know, even a tiny difference like this can be seen in a photo. And in case you wanted to do this to rotate the image altogether, you can use these arrows, and that would just rotate the image by 90 degrees, but most of the times you don't need to use that, so you'll just rotate the image a bit by dragging it along the side. Okay, so I'll go ahead, save changes, and the image is processed, and I can move on to the next module. And the next one I want to cover is crop. So let's tap on crop. Okay, so what you can see here, that in crop you can first pick an aspect ratio for your image. Now, and in order to do this, you tap on this icon over here, and here you have a bunch of different options, like different aspect ratios. For Instagram you would use 1:1. For most other purposes I'd just like to use the original, which is 4:3 by the way. And once you've selected an aspect ratio, you can go ahead and drag the corners of the image, as I'm doing now, and just resize the view like that. And once you've done this dragging, you can also just tap inside the frame now and start moving it around to get a perfect composition. Now, the problem with the original composition was that, you know, it kind of broke some of the fundamental composition rules, like the rule of thirds. And I think I really want to emphasize the fact that this woman is, you know, almost walking on the water, or at least that's what it looks like. So in order to do that, I think I'll be better off by really making water more prominent in this image, and then by putting the woman higher up, as I'm doing now. And now I just have to choose where I want to put the woman horizontally, and you know, after a bit of looking around, I think I'm going to go for the most classic rule of thirds here, which will give me a very interesting result. And just in case you're wondering, if you need to rotate this frame by 90 degrees, you can do it using this button. But we'll go back to what we had initially. Okay, and we'll go ahead and save changes. Now that that's done, we can go ahead and do even more adjustments. And you know, one thing I like to do in Snapseed every now and then is just to save my progress. And the way you do this in Snapseed is just by saving the image. So if I tap on the save icon over here, save to photo library, then a copy of an image in exactly this state will be saved to my camera roll. Now, this is not the final version of the image, but you know, if I made a mistake and screwed everything up in the next step, it's good to have this step saved so that I can come back to this as opposed to starting from scratch. So it's just a good idea to save your progress every now and then. Okay, so now let's go to black and white, because you know, the color in this image, I mean, it's alright, but it's not that good. It doesn't really add value to the image. So let me just select black and white. Okay, and ta-da, the image is black and white now. But remember, in Snapseed, there's some more things you can do, not just make an image black and white. For example, if you tap on this icon with a star, Snapseed allows you to go through different presets of contrast and brightness combinations. So if you just need some more ideas to what you could do with this image, you can go through these. But I'll leave it at neutral for now. Then, if you tap on this circle at the bottom, you get these different colors, which essentially tells you which colors were used when converting the image to black and white. And so here you don't really see a big difference, because you know, there weren't that many colors in the original image, but sometimes this can really make a difference, and it's just a fun thing to play around. Because you know, these different color options can be totally different in some images. You don't see that big of a difference here though. So okay, I'll leave this at neutral once again, and I'll show you what other adjustments are there in the black and white module. So you got grain, contrast, and brightness. Now I normally don't use grain, but if you want to add this old look, you just increase grain. Well, I won't be using grain, so I'll leave that as 0. Now if you go to contrast, that's something that's really worth adjusting for a lot of pictures. And for a photo like this, well, I generally like to increase contrast. So let me just play around with this. So in general, I want to make the image as contrasted as possible, but if I do it too much, I lose all the details, so that's not going to work. So the key is finding the right balance, so that the image is nice and has a lot of contrast, but also all the detail is still in. And I think something around 20 gives me this kind of look. And now I'll look at brightness, which just tells you how bright or how dark the image is. Once again, you don't want to lose any detail by going too low or too high. So you just have to find a perfect balance that you think works well for this image. And you know, after a bit of thinking, I think that 15 looks pretty good. Now, once again, if you want to see what the original image looked like, you tap on this icon at the top right, and you see there's quite some difference. And obviously, I like the black and white a lot better, because the color weren't that great, but in black and white, you really see how dramatic and unreal this scene looks. Okay, so once you're happy with the result, you go ahead and apply the changes. And the one last thing I want to do with this image is to add some tilt shift. So to do that, we'll go to Tilt Shift module, tap on it, and open up Tilt Shift. Now there's one thing that's kind of strange about Snapseed, and it's the fact that by default the Tilt Shift module also increases contrast by 25. Well, we don't want that here, so I'll just decrease contrast to 0. There are also some saturation and brightness adjustments, which we'll ignore for now, but what we care about is transition and blur strength. But before we even look into those, let me just show you what tilt shift is. And essentially, tilt shift is an option that allows you to artificially make some part of the image out of focus while keeping others in focus. Just so that you can see what I mean, I'll increase blur strength even more. And now you can see that everything that's in between the two middle lines is perfectly in focus. Then the next two lines sort of represent the transition, which moves from sharp to less and less focused areas, and then everything else is out of focus. So that way, tilt shift allows you to sort of manipulate the depth of field of the image artificially. Now, there are two options for tilt shift in Snapseed, and if you tap on the star, you can see them. So you get the linear tilt shift and the elliptical tilt shift. And with elliptical, you get this ellipse that you can change however you want using 2 fingers. But you know, for this image, linear will work best because the horizon line is perfectly linear here. Alright, so I think that since the horizon line is already there, it's sort of a good natural separation between things that could be in focus and things that could be out of focus. And I think it would look quite interesting if we were just to blur out the sea in the foreground. So I'm gonna align this line along the horizon. I'll also increase blur strength to 100, and then I'll adjust transition. Well, one option would be to keep the transition at 0, which would be a stronger effect. But I think it looks a bit more natural if the transition is kind of not so rapid, so that everything that's in the close-up foreground is really blurred out, but things that are far away aren't as blurred as the rest of the scene. Okay, so I think this looks quite good. And now if we just tap on this comparison icon at the top right corner, you can see the image before tilt shift and now after. And the difference essentially is the sharpness in the foreground. So just by adding tilt shift here, we've artificially created a sense of depth of field, which you could get with a more professional camera like a DSLR. But now, thanks to the tilt shift module in Snapseed, you can also get the same effect in Snapseed. So I'll go ahead, save changes, and I'll also make sure that the final version of this image is saved to photo library. Okay, so that concludes this video, and in the next video I'll show you how to use perhaps the most powerful part of Snapseed, which is Tune Image Module. So stay tuned for that.